Hi, I'm Amanda Charlton from Lab Plus in Auckland. In this 30-minute session, we have 5 learning objectives. We're going to discuss and identify the barriers to learning and, importantly, apply 6 effective learning strategies using pathology examples. And then we're going to reinforce those 6 strategies by applying dual coding, retrieval practice, and using a tool called Anki flashcards. Finally, we will discuss and identify solutions to improve learning. The first exercise is using your post-it notes and Sharpies. Discuss amongst yourselves and write down what are your barriers to learning. 1 idea per post-it. Stick them on the wall over there, and I want you to read each other's post-it notes and group them into themes. You have 3 minutes. The next objective is to understand and apply 6 effective learning strategies, and they're nicely illustrated here in this poster from the website The Learning Scientists. We are going to build these learning strategies in Lego. Let me give you a demonstration. One of these strategies is called spaced practice. You have all been given a card with a different learning strategy, and here's my card. It's spaced practice. You can see what the definition is. It's spacing out your learning over time, and here is how to do it, using a calendar for scheduling and then different intervals for retrieving the information. Now I need to build this concept in Lego and use a pathology example to illustrate it. Here's a model that I've built in Lego. Starting at the left, here's the lesson content, which is this beige window on a green platform with 2 coloured things on the top. This represents the lesson content of endometrial adenocarcinoma, and the green platform at the bottom is the epidemiological background. The beige is the macroscopic and microscopic morphology. The blue represents the immunohistochemical profile, and the red indicates the differential diagnoses. Now, the key to space practice is after this tutorial session, which is represented here by the yellow stage, is to pass through this window of opportunity. Have a sleep, go home, sleep, and here's our learner. And our learner is going to institute spaced practice. What she's doing is she is now going to review the lesson content and make Anki flashcards. More about this later. And review these flashcards 24 hours after the initial learning event. She was only able to retrieve the background information, the macro and micro, and the immunohistochemical, but she was unable to retrieve the missing part, the red part, which was the differential diagnoses. So she gets feedback and learns what her gaps are. 1 week later, the Anki flashcards come up on her phone, and she practices bringing the answers to mind. She gets most of it right, but forgets immunohistochemistry, but remembers this time the differential diagnoses. She uses the feedback from the correct answer to fill her learning gaps. 1 month later, the flashcard set comes up on her cell phone. She retrieves the information from memory without looking it up. She gets almost all right, but she's forgotten the immunohistochemistry. She gets feedback from the flashcard to relearn the immunohistochemistry, and then she practices it again 5 months later when it comes up on her phone. This time she's remembered the background, the morphology, the immunohistochemistry, and the differential diagnoses. 6 months after the initial learning event, she has passed through this door here and on this stage where she is doing the exam. This is the door to the RCPA fellowship, And now she's on the other side, and because she has done this spaced practice using an effective method of retrieval, she is easily able to recall all of the information, including the immunohistochemistry and the differential diagnoses, by bringing this information to mind in her memory. Now it's your turn. In individuals or pairs, build your assigned strategy using the Lego on the table, and think of and be able to explain using a pathology example. You have 5 minutes. Now the 5 minutes are up. Each individual or pair will explain their strategy to the group at the same table, and I will video capture your explanations for reference. This is what the outcome will look like. Each group has constructed a Lego model for each of the 6 learning strategies and explained their particular Lego model and metaphor with a pathology example to all the other learners. Each explanation takes 2 minutes each. I would also encourage learners to snap a photo with their cell phone to encourage dual coding. Speaking of dual coding, this brings us to the third learning objective, is some application. So you've been distributed a sheet of blank paper and some Sharpie markers. Your task is to take notes with pictures, diagrams, cartoons, timelines, something besides words and pictures on this 4-minute audio clip. I'm just going to scrub to the starting point, which is 1 minute in, and then I'll play the audio and you take notes with pictures. And go. While the audio clip is playing, I'll leave this PowerPoint screen up on the big screen with the audio going in the background so that the learners get the cue from the actual paper title and some other material there. How did you go? Here's my attempt at dual coding with words and pictures. Here's the study group. They were divided into 2 groups. The repeated retrieval by testing group had a test of short answer questions followed by feedback at 2 weekly intervals, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So they were tested 3 times on the content, compared to the control group where the learners were given a study guide and they reread the study notes or the lecture notes, reread every 2 weeks. After 6 months, they had a final test, and the group that had the short answer question testing had higher test results than the rereading group. The study authors point out that this repeated testing or repeated retrieval, either by reading or testing, is more than would normally happen after a 1-hour lecture for medical registrars. Typically, there's no retrieval after a lecture. So, are you interested as to what the difference is in the final test result? Well, you have to read the paper to know the answer. And here it is. So, there was actually quite a lot of forgetting, even with this repeated retrieval. But the testing group remembered 40%, the repeated rereading group got 25%, and in the typical situation with no retrieval after a lecture, the forgetting curve would predict that the retrieval would be less than 25%. What's another example of dual coding? Well, posters. Posters have a picture dominance, and this cartoon character poster has an emotional, learner-centered story. and cartoons are a form of dual coding. And in this panel here, this leads to a series of videos. Videos with audios and visuals are also an example of dual coding. Our next learning objective is to evaluate the Anki flashcard method for retrieval practice. So if you look at this graph here, after a learning event, then we have this exponential forgetting curve over time, but we can ameliorate that by retrieving the information, forgetting, retrieving, and retrieving, and the spaces extend over time. We're going to do a few practice questions using an example deck of Anki cards that I have made for strategies on effective learning. I've opened this up on Anki Web, and here's my Learning How to Learn slide deck of questions. Here's the first question. Repeated practice quiz tests versus repeated rereading of material. Which is more effective and why? Two-part question. What do you think? Open to the audience to discuss amongst themselves and discuss the answer. And I think and you've got to say the answer before turning over the card to look at the answer. So I think it is testing is more effective because it's a form of retrieval practice. And here's the answer. Both use practice, and the difference is the testing is a form of retrieval, which stacks two effective methods together. Then this has also got a visual attached to it for dual coding, the infographic I sketched out earlier, and then we rate personally how we did on the answer. Was that easy to retrieve, or did we not get it right? If it was easy, it shows us the card again in 4 days. If we didn't get it, then it'll show us the card again in less than 1 minute, or if it was okay, less than 10 minutes. So I'm going to click good. Coming on to our next question, cramming. What's the effective strategy? Well, the opposite of cramming would be spaced practice. Here it is, spaced practice over time in the calendar and how to do it. So that was good. What is dual coding and how do you do it? Dual coding is bringing the words and text together, and how could you do it? Multiple ways. You could look at the images in your textbook, cover up the legends and describe what it says. You could draw out the text in a diagram, a timeline, a cartoon, or animation. Let's see, dual coding, combine words and visuals, and there is some how to do it 3 different ways, and multiple different methods of outputs, including, what did I miss out? An infographic, or a graphic organizer, or a conference poster. So that was easy. I'm going to click easy. Here's the next card. It's a picture card. What learning strategies are represented in this model? Okay, we have some learning on a tutorial, sleep, Anki flashcards, 24, 1 week, 1 week. So this is something that's occurring over time. It's something repetition over time. So this must be spaced practice. And I know Anki flashcards, they're a type of retrieval practice. So this is retrieval practice and spaced practice. And that was good. So you get the idea from these flashcards. It will show them again to you depending on how you rate the ease of the answer. Moving on to the last learning objective, which is to discuss and identify solutions to common learning problems. So now I need you to get up from your seats and take your Sharpie marker, go and look at the wall where you've got all the problems stuck on your post-it notes, and vote for the problems that you would like discussed. You're allowed 3 dot votes. You can vote for 3 different problems or put all your dots onto one post-it note. This is how we can prioritize what is going to be most useful for most people. Okay, so the top problems are, and I'll list them out here on the whiteboard, and then we will go through the next resources to discuss solutions. And then depending on what the learners come up with, the problems that they want solutions to, then I've divided up the next 5 PowerPoints into these tables with different types of problems and solutions. And then I've put them into major categories, which I've kind of arbitrarily defined. So here's where the Pomodoro lives: distraction and multitasking, shallow work. And we can just discuss these amongst the students and let them come up with some solutions themselves from the floor, as well as what the research says or key authors in the field would say. And I've done this for problems that I anticipate will be common. And I've included stuff from Barbara Oakley and other learning people. One thing that I think we should address is the modifiers of learning, including our physical ones, which is self-care, including exercise, diet, sleep, and chronotype. Emotional problems and cognitive reframing, and then of course ineffective learning strategies, which is the topic of this whole presentation, and then specific tool solutions if learners ask questions about cytology digital learning. So although we've used the Anki flashcards, here's some good videos on effective use of them. And then these last 3 specifically address tools for digital cytology cases to practice using the poster that I made for the RCPA website. That's the end of the formal presentation. And then the last slide I'm going to show the learners is an advertisement for a invitation to a research study that is ongoing that I'm conducting with the university at Macquarie University in Sydney, and this will be open on 18th of March, and I would like to send the learners an email to invite them to join the study. It'll take about 40 minutes of online time, and it uses retrieval, elaboration, interleaving, concrete examples, and dual coding. So I'm sure the learners will get something out of it as well.